Hi there. Welcome back to Haunting Vales. Tonight's mystery begins with a child who saw something no one else did. It was just after sunset, when the streets of St. Mary Mead were quiet and still. From an upstairs window, a child watched a man step out of the dark and into a crime that would shake the entire village. The child spoke of face, a movement, a moment that could not be unseen. But when the body was found the next morning, the police found no witnesses, no evidence, and no reason to believe a frightened child. No one, that is, except Miss Marple, because children may misunderstand many things, but they rarely lie about what truly terrifies them. And somewhere in this quiet village, a murderer knows one small pair of eyes saw everything. Before we uncover what that child truly witnessed, don't forget to subscribe for more chilling Miss Marple mysteries. Chapter 1. The Child Who Saw the Murderer. The rain fell softly over the village of Stonemere, tapping on rooftops and soaking into the narrow lanes like quiet footsteps that no one noticed. It was the kind of rain that made people stay indoors, curtains drawn, fires lit, and secrets kept close. Inside her small cottage at the edge of the village, Miss Marple sat by the window with her knitting resting in her lap. The fire burned gently behind her. The ticking of the clock filled the room with steady purpose. She did not look up when a knock came at the door. A moment passed, then another knock. Sharp. Urgent. Miss Marple placed her knitting carefully on the table, rose slowly, and opened the door. Standing outside in the rain was Inspector Hale. His hat dripped water onto the stone step. His face looked 10 years older than it had last week. "Good evening, Miss Marple," he said quietly. "I wish I were bringing better news." Miss Marple stepped aside. "Please come in, Inspector. It sounds very much like you are carrying trouble." He entered, removing his hat, his eyes heavy. "There has been a murder," he said. Miss Marple did not gasp. She did not widen her eyes. She only nodded once. "Who?" she asked softly. "Inspector Hale Suyalowit." Mr. Leonard Crowley. The name settled into the room like dust. Miss Marple closed the door gently. "That is terrible," she said, "and very inconvenient for someone, I suspect." The inspector hesitated. "There is a witness." Miss Marple turned slowly. "A reliable one?" He lowered his voice. "A child." Leonard Crowley's home stood at the edge of the village square, a tall, narrow house with dark windows and a garden that never bloomed. Inside, the air still smelled of gunpowder and rain-soaked wood. His body lay in the study. The desk lamp had toppled. Papers were scattered. The window stood open, rain blown across the floor like tears that refused to stop. Crowley lay on his side near the desk, his eyes wide, his mouth slightly open as though he had tried to speak one last word. He never got the chance. Inspector Hale stood beside the body while the village doctor completed his examination. "One clean shot," the doctor said. "Aston." Hale nodded grimly. The sound of quiet footsteps echoed from the hallway. A woman stood in the doorway, pale and shaking. This was Eleanor Crowley, the victim's wife. Her hands trembled as she pressed a cloth to her lips. "I was in the kitchen," she whispered. "I heard a loud bang. I ran upstairs and found him like this." Hale studied her closely. "Did you see anyone leave the house?" She shook her head slowly. "No, no one." Hale turned toward the doorway. "And the child?" he asked. A small figure stepped forward. Lucy Turner, 8 years old. Thin, rain-soaked hair stuck to her cheeks. Her eyes were wide, but unblinking. Too still. She had been playing outside when it happened. She had seen something. Miss Marple arrived just as Lucy was being led into the sitting room. The girl's hands were clenched tight at her sides. Miss Marple knelt gently before her. "My dear," Miss Marple said softly, "I'm very glad you are safe. You're not in trouble. You only need to tell us what you saw." Lucy looked at her. Her eyes did not move. "I saw him," Lucy whispered. The room went silent. "Who did you see, sweetheart?" Miss Marple asked. Lucy's lips trembled. "The man who killed him." Leonard Crowley gasped. Inspector Hale leaned forward. "Can you describe it?" Lucy swallowed. "He was tall. He wore a dark coat. And he had shiny shoes." The room released a slow breath. That could have been half the village. Then Lucy added the words that changed everything. "He smiled at me." A cold silence fell. Miss Marple's eyes sharpened slightly. "Are you sure it was a smile, dear?" Lucy nodded. "He looked happy." By the next morning, the entire village was awake with fear. Leonard Crowley had not been a kind man. He had borrowed money and returned nothing. He had made business deals and left people ruined. He had sued neighbors over a fence that had stood for 50 years. He had collected enemies the way others collected coins. And now, one of them had finally taken from him everything. The suspect came quickly. Thomas Reed, the gardener, who had been fired 2 weeks earlier. Benjamin Crowley, Leonard's cousin, who was cut from the will. Victor Allen, Leonard's former business partner, now nearly bankrupt. And Leonard Crowley herself, whose marriage had been cold for years. Yet the only true witness was a child. And children, Miss Marple knew, told the truth in strange ways. Miss Marple requested to see Lucy again. The girl sat near the fire, wrapped in a blanket. Her eyes followed every movement in the room, remembering everything. "You are very brave," Miss Marple said kindly. Lucy shrugged. "I was scared." "Yes," Miss Marple said gently. "Brave people are always scared. That is how we know they are brave." Lucy stared into the fire. Miss Marple leaned closer. "Tell me again what you saw." Slowly this time. Lucy inhaled. "I was playing with my ball near the path. I heard shouting from inside the house. Then a loud sound. The window upstairs was open. I looked up, and I saw a man step back from the window. He climbed down the side and ran." Miss Marple's voice was calm. "Did he look at you?" "Yes," Lucy said softly. "He smiled. Then he ran." That smile disturbed Miss Marple deeply. Killers who smiled were not driven by anger. They were driven by certainty. That afternoon, Miss Marple visited the gardener's shed. Thomas Reed stood inside, holding a shovel, his hands trembling. "They think it was me," he muttered, "because he fired me." "Did you kill Mr. Crowley?" Miss Marple asked gently. Reed looked up in shock. "No, ma'am. I hated him, but I would never murder a man." "Where were you last night?" "At the pub," Reed said quickly. "From 7 until closing. You can ask anyone." Miss Marple nodded thoughtfully. Next, she visited Benjamin Crowley. Benjamin sat in his dark parlor with a glass of whiskey in hand. "I lost everything because of Leonard," he sneered. "The man destroyed my life." "Did you destroy his?" Miss Marple asked quietly. Benjamin slammed his glass down. "No, I wish him dead, but I did not kill him." "Where were you last night?" "Home. Alone." Miss Marple studied his face as he said it. Not a single muscle twitched. The final suspect came last. Leonard Crowley sat alone in her bedroom, staring at the wall. "You were unhappy," Miss Marple said gently. Eleanor's voice cracked. "He controlled everything. My money, my friends, my life. Did you plan to leave him?" "Yes," Eleanor whispered. "And he knew it. Did that make him angry?" "Yes." "Did it make you angry?" Eleanor looked down. "Yes." "Did you kill him?" Eleanor's hands shook as tears fell. "No, I wanted freedom, not blood." Miss Marple left the house with one thought burning in her mind. Everyone had motive, but only one person had smiled at the child. That evening, Miss Marple returned to Lucy. The child sat drawing with a broken pencil. "What are you drawing, dear?" Miss Marple asked. Lucy held up the page. It showed a tall man in a black coat, with bright shoes, and one terrible detail. His mouth was curved upward, smiling. Miss Marple studied the drawing carefully. "Lucy," she said gently, "if you saw that man again, would you recognize him?" Lucy nodded. "Yes." Miss Marple's heart tightened, because now the killer was not just a shadow. He had a face in the mind of a child, and he was still free. Chapter 2. The Truth the Child Could Not Forget. The village of Stonemere changed after the murder. Doors locked earlier. Curtains closed tighter. Conversations grew quieter and ended faster. The slow comfort that once lived in the lanes and gardens faded beneath a growing fear that moved from house to house like a quiet sickness. A killer walked free, and a child carried his smile in her memory. Lucy Turner did not sleep well anymore. Each night, she woke at the smallest sound, her small body stiff beneath the blankets, eyes wide in the dark. Her mother would rush into the room and hold her until the shaking stopped. But even in her mother's arms, Lucy did not forget. She saw his face every time she closed her eyes. Miss Marple understood this better than anyone. Children, she knew, did not forget what frightened them. They carried fear the way adults carried guilt. Quietly, heavily. That morning, Miss Marple walked slowly to the Turner home. The sky was pale and heavy with clouds, as though the village itself was waiting for something to break. Lucy sat at the window when Miss Marple arrived. Her small hands rested in her lap. She was not drawing today. "Good morning, my dear," Miss Marple said softly. Lucy turned her head and managed a weak smile. Miss Marple sat beside her. "Have you had breakfast?" Lucy nodded. "Did you sleep?" Lucy hesitated, then shook her head. Miss Marple did not push her. Instead, she watched the street outside with her. A man walked past the window, carrying a basket of bread. Lucy flinched. "Was it him?" Miss Marple asked gently. Lucy's shoulders stiffened. "No, but he was tall." Miss Marple placed her hand lightly on Lucy's arm. "The man who hurt Mr. Crowley will not hurt you. I promise." Lucy looked at her with eyes that were far too old for her age. "He saw me," Lucy whispered. Miss Marple felt the weight of those words settle deep in her chest. "Yes," she said softly, "but we also saw him. Through you." Inspector Hale called all suspects to the station that afternoon. Thomas Reed arrived first. His boots were muddy. His jaw was tight. Next came Benjamin Crowley. Calm, polished, silent. Victor Allen followed. His hands shook as he removed his hat. And last came Leonard Crowley, dressed entirely in black, her eyes hollow. Lucy sat in a small side room with Miss Marple while Inspector Hale conducted the questioning. Miss Marple could hear the low murmur of voices through the thin wall. Words were exchanged. Denials were made. Anger rose and fell. Lucy listened without meaning to. "They all sound the same," she whispered. Miss Marple nodded. "Yes, my dear. They do, don't they?" After nearly an hour, Inspector Hale opened the door. "We are ready for the child," he said gently. Lucy froze. Miss Marple knelt before her. "You will not be alone," she said. "I will be right beside you." Lucy nodded slowly. The suspects were seated in a line along the far wall of the station room. Lucy entered holding Miss Marple's hand. Her eyes moved slowly across the faces. Thomas Reed stared at the floor. Victor Allen swallowed hard. Benjamin Crowley stared straight ahead, calm and unmoving. Leonard Crowley wept quietly. Lucy's eyes stopped. On Benjamin. Her grip tightened on Miss Marple's hand. Miss Marple felt it immediately. Lucy's breathing changed. Shallow. Shaky. Miss Marple leaned close. "Is it him?" she whispered. Lucy nodded. "It is him," Lucy said softly. The room went completely silent. Benjamin Crowley rose to his feet in one smooth motion. "This is madness," he said calmly. "A frightened child's imagination is not evidence." Inspector Hale watched him closely. "Where did you say you were again last night?" the inspector asked. "At home. Alone." Miss Marple's eyes never left Benjamin. "Do you own a dark coat?" she asked gently. Benjamin hesitated. "Yes." "Shiny shoes?" His jaw tightened. "Yes." Lucy shrank back. "That's him," she whispered again. Benjamin laughed sharply. "Half the men here own such things." "That is true," Miss Marple said calmly. "But not all of them smile after they kill." Benjamin's eyes flickered for the first time. Just for a moment. Miss Marple saw it, and so did the child. That night, Benjamin Crowley was released. There was no weapon, no fingerprints, no proof, only the word of a child. Lucy cried when she heard. "He's free," she whispered. He smiled again when I looked at him. Miss Marple's hands curled slowly around the arms of her chair. "Yes," she said softly, "but he also showed fear today. That matters." Miss Marple began to revisit the details of Leonard Crowley's life. She read every file, every complaint, every debt, every argument, and one pattern appeared clearly. Benjamin Crowley had been ruined by his cousin 2 years earlier. Leonard had taken over his business through legal tricks, leaving Benjamin nearly penniless. But Benjamin had not married, had not fled, had not collapsed. He had remained close. Too close. Ms. Marple paid him a quiet visit that evening. Benjamin welcomed her with polite surprise. "Do come in," he said with practiced charm. They sat across from each other in his parlor. "Why did you stay near your cousin after he destroyed your life?" Miss Marple asked directly. Benjamin smiled thinly. "Because hatred needs hope," he said. "Hope that one day balance will be restored." "Balance through murder?" Miss Marple asked. His smile faded. "You accuse me without proof." "No," Miss Marple said gently. "I accuse you because of child." "A frightened child," he snapped. "Children do not imagine smiles in the dark so clearly," Miss Marple replied. Silence fell. Benjamin's voice dropped. "You will never prove it." Miss Marple studied him calmly. "No," she said, "but sometimes proof arrives when patience is tested." Patience was tested the next morning. Lucy vanished. Her bed was empty. Her window open. The village exploded into panic. Benjamin took her. Lucy's mother cried. He took her because she saw him. Inspector Hale organized a search at once. Fields were combed. Roads were blocked. The woods were searched. Miss Marple stood still at the edge of the Turner yard. He had not taken Lucy to silence her. He had taken her to prove something else, to force the truth forward. If he wanted to vanish her, Miss Marple said quietly, we would not be searching. The search led to the old stone mill by the river. Lucy's shoe was found near the door. Inspector Hale entered with his pistol drawn. Miss Marple followed despite his warning. Inside the mill, the air was cold and damp. Lucy sat bound to a chair near the far wall. Benjamin Crowley stood beside her. The gun in his hand was shaking. It was always him, Benjamin said wildly as the officers entered. He deserved it. He robbed me of everything. Everything. You could have left, Miss Marple said calmly. But you wanted more than escape. You wanted satisfaction. He smiled at Lucy. Inspector Hale said sharply, why? Benjamin's eyes filled with tears. Because I thought I had one. The officers moved forward. Benjamin dropped the gun. Lucy cried as Miss Marple rushed to her side. The truth had finally broken through fear. But something still lingered in Miss Marple's mind. The shot that killed Leonard Crowley had been fired from inside the room, not from the window. And Benjamin had fled through the window only after, which meant he had not acted alone. Miss Marple looked up slowly and met Inspector Hale's eyes. The real danger had not ended. It had only begun to reveal itself. Chapter 3. The Child Who Spoke the Final Truth. Lucy did not speak for 2 days after the night at the old stone mill. She slept most of the time, wrapped in blankets, her small body trembling whenever footsteps passed her door. Her mother never left her side. The doctor said her voice would return when her fear loosened its grip. But Miss Marple knew better. Fear did not vanish on its own. It had to be faced. The village believed the case was over. Benjamin Crowley had confessed to the murder. He had taken the child. He had pointed the gun. He had broken in through the study window. Everything fit cleanly on the surface. Too cleanly. Inspector Hale thought the same. The shot was fired from inside the room, he said quietly later that night. The window was only the escape. Miss Marple nodded, and the child saw him after the shot. Miss Marple said, "Not during." Hale's face darkened. "So someone else opened the way." Miss Marple's eyes moved slowly toward the door of Eleanor Crowley's home. Eleanor Crowley had not slept since the night her husband died. She moved through the house like a shadow, touching walls, staring into corners, pausing where his voice once filled the rooms. Miss Marple found her in the study. The broken lamp had been removed, the window repaired, the blood scrubbed clean. Only memory remained. "You have every reason to feel free now," Miss Marple said gently. Eleanor's lips trembled. "I feel nothing at all." Miss Marple sat across from her quietly. "Benjamin killed Leonard," Eleanor whispered. "The village knows it. The police know it. Why are you here?" Miss Marple folded her hands. "Because you opened the window, my dear." Eleanor stiffened. "You fought with your husband shortly before the murder," Miss Marple continued. Voices were heard. "You knew Benjamin was coming. You knew what he intended to do." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "You stepped out of the room," Miss Marple said softly. "You let him take the shot. And when it was over, you opened the window so he could escape like a ghost. That was your hand in the crime." Silence pressed down on the room. Finally, Eleanor whispered, "He was already dead to me." "You did not pull the trigger," Miss Marple replied. "But you made it possible. That makes you part of the killing." Eleanor collapsed into the chair. "He would have destroyed Lucy's family next," she sobbed. "Another lawsuit. Another ruin. I told Benjamin to frighten him. Only to frighten him." Her voice broke. "I did not know he would bring a gun." Miss Marple closed her eyes for a moment. But when the shot was fired, Miss Marple said gently, "You chose silence over truth." Eleanor bowed her head. Inspector Hale arrived within the hour. Eleanor did not resist. Lucy spoke again that night. Miss Marple sat beside her bed as the moonlight touched the floor. "I heard her cry," Lucy whispered. "She was in the hallway after the loud sound. She looked at me too." Miss Marple reached for the child's hand. "She did not smile," Lucy said. "She was scared, just like me." Miss Marple held her closer. "You did very well, my dear." Benjamin Crowley was sentenced for murder. Eleanor Crowley was later convicted for helping him escape. The village of Stonemere slowly returned to life. Windows reopened. Laughter crept back into the lanes. Children played freely again. But Lucy never forgot the smile. And Miss Marple never forgot the price of silence. One evening, as the sun lowered over the fields, Inspector Hale visited Miss Marple one last time. "You saved that child," he said quietly. Miss Marple stirred her tea. "No," she said. "The child saved us all by telling the truth." Lucy later returned to playing outside with her worn little ball. One afternoon, she stopped in front of Miss Marple's cottage and waved. Miss Marple waved back. The smile on Lucy's face this time was not one of fear. It was real, and that made all the difference. If this mystery kept you guessing until the very end, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. More dark village secrets, hidden killers, and chilling twists are coming soon.